61 is a similar situation. Chair recognizes Councilman Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. A number of, as many council members were walking in, they should have received a letter from the developer of this particular project, from the Kingwood Super Neighborhood Committee, that has recommended approval of this. And many may ask, if the super neighborhood goes against it or goes in favor of it, why am I in opposition to it? And I did write a letter of opposition to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs just the other day. I sat on the Kingwood Super Neighborhood Committee board for a number of years as a school board member, and it's comprised of probably about 8 people, and you get maybe 2 or 3 that show up. Monday, 2 weeks ago, we had a community association meeting where over 350 people showed up on a number of issues. It was related not only to this particular issue, but also the expansion of Kingwood Drive. So we got the opportunity to listen to a number of individuals. When I went back and started doing my due diligence, as I stated yesterday when housing took a little bit of a hit, a lot of the slowdown on this particular one is because this was my first, and I wanted to make sure I did my due diligence. So what I did was, I put more faith and emphasis on the community associations rather than the Super Neighborhood Committee. Because in my opinion, in Kingwood, the Super Neighborhood Committee does not reflect the views of the folks in and around Kingwood. They may represent their own individual views, but as a whole, they do not. So I went back to the community associations, in particular the 3 community associations whose neighborhoods border on this particular project. And I solicited feedback, and we received over 100 emails and phone calls. And it was about 90% opposed to the development and about 10% in favor of it. The interesting thing, when you look at the data, and I'm going to let the data drive my decision, I was voted in to represent the community and speak for them, not for my individual views. So when I looked at the data, it was in strong opposition to this. A number of things that we started to research, and this is the first foray into the city of Houston by this development company. They are not going to manage it themselves. They're going to hire an agency to manage it for them. So that threw up a little bit of a red flag. There was some inconsistency in the responses I was receiving from the developer that I brought up yesterday as per the number of units and interesting things along those ideas. There are 10 senior housing development projects in Kingwood, all within about a 5-mile radius. So there are a number of opportunities and projects and development and housing for seniors. Now, cutting to the economics of this thing, it's one of the developers asked me, how can you be opposed to a senior development project? And my question back to them was, what happens if you don't receive the tax credits and we're not going to develop the project? So it's about economics. It's not about doing the right things for seniors. This developer is in it to make money. And if they can't make money on it by the opposition of myself and the state representative and the state senator, that means the project goes away because of economics. So if you're really concerned about a senior housing project development, do it anyway and don't let the economics drive it. So I would ask my fellow council members to join me in opposition to this proposed Mainstreet Kingwood development projects, and I will ask for a roll call vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Martin. And let me compliment you on the impressive amount of diligence you showed in all of the projects. You had 3 projects.
It's actually 6.
6. You did more homework than I've ever seen Councilmember do, and you spent a lot of time in community researching these. Respectfully, I'm going to take the same position I did the last time, understanding how the vote is going to go.
I totally understand your position. Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, Mary. Where I was speaking about the example on how for developers to do it, maybe I ought to say, speak on the example of my colleague on how to do it for our individual jobs that we're called to do here at council. So I thank my colleague on that. Mayor, without belaboring the point too much, I think the council member has raised an issue that I think all of us ought to begin thinking about, if not discussing, and that is the role of our super neighborhood councils in this process. I value our super neighborhood councils highly. Some are larger than others, some are more active than others, some have a little more expertise than others. So I would hope that moving forward we would begin a discussion, a thoughtful discussion about the role of super neighborhood councils as opposed to, say, civic associations within the same area. So thank you.
Councilmember, that's excellent area for discussion at the appropriate council committee. Super neighborhoods are a roll-up of civic associations. The Kingwood Association is a little bit different than the other super neighborhoods, so it requires a broader discussion. Chair recognizes Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. And both of the items, number 61 and 60, were both discussed in a housing committee meeting, and we had full discussion. Matter of fact, we stayed in housing for several hours on yesterday concerning this item because we had constituents to come forward in opposition. But one of my concerns that I have is the lack of communication among developers as well, representatives from housing concerning these items. Because it was mentioned that the developers had communicated with the council members prior to this coming before city council saying that we're needing your support or to share with them about the project. And what we found out was the developers did not communicate with the council members. So that's like a conflict right there. And so when you call out council members and say that we've spoken with the council members, inform them of the development, that becomes an issue. So immediately a red flag is raised up on behalf of the council member. So that was one of the concerns that came up on yesterday. And in past time, there was due diligence among the housing development department that what they would do is there was a major project that would come before council, and they thought of any conflict, they would always still communicate with the council member and say, do we have your support on that? Well, as of yesterday, from hearing from the council members, that did not take place either. So we have to look at the communication when big items come aboard. Because I can say, I wasn't here last week, I had 2 items, one I knew about, one I did not. And so my office didn't get communication on the items that came before council. Just one item I just knew about because of the due diligence that was done and the developer had built in the district already. So I just have some concerns that we just have to do better in communicating to our council members, even at large council members as well, because they have a part in the vote. So this is one of the comments that came up yesterday and shared by the constituents. So I don't know what we can do, just do better. I know the policies in the state has changed that you really don't need the council members' official support like you did in the past. Like there used to be a letter that we would attach to the application. But my understanding is that they don't need that anymore from a council member. I thought they did, because we represent the constituents. So I think if they would have done their due diligence and communicated with the council members, I don't think we would have been right here today. So those are just my open comments on this. And I just want to thank the communities of both Kingwood and Songwood for coming forward and making their comments heard, as well as the council members of doing their work both equally on investigating this. And as developers, we want to build in our communities, you know, for our families. But I think that's just a process that we need to go to in respecting the procedures and moving forward when communicating with the council members.
Councilmember, if I may respond, you're exactly right. A smart developer would reach out to, certainly to the district council member. There's a little bit different stance by the housing department. These are not projects that the city is advocating. We have a ministerial role vis-a-vis the state, and we have a requirement to bring it forward. As you know, if it's a project that we are funding, you would hear from the director, we would send the developers around. This is a little more arm's length relationship, and I think that's, I trust that the housing department did advise all of these developers to go and discuss things with council members, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily smart enough to do that.
So wouldn't they still just open up the communication to say, even though this is something, because when it's a city issue, they do communicate with us, so I have to say that. But when it's a state issue, when you still say still that they, even though we're not giving the money, still do the due diligence to get the communication from the council member to feel what the community, you know, what they're feeling, their communications are.
Yes, ma'am, and again, since we're trying not to advocate for these projects, these are projects that are coming, basically, it's a straight pass-through, and we have a ministerial duty, and so we do treat them differently than we would ones that are locally funded and where we are a partner.
Okay, so I want to make that clear. When it's city issues, they do. But this right here, I just want to just be clear, so it's just going to be just policy across the board, whatever projects that come into the communities that they talk to us on this when we're funding the project. But this, I guess, is a different level of communication, I'm just assuming.
And I will advise the housing department that, to make sure that there's a strong message to any developer that wants to develop one of these projects, whether they're, the state or a city project, that they engage with council members. It's good advice.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
And I believe many of them did. Vice Mayor Pro Tem Bradford.
Thank you, Councilman. I think one thing that can and perhaps should be done, because we spent a lot of time in Councilmember Adams' committee, a couple hours here on this issue and one other issue. It was good, healthy discussion for the developer, for those of us on council and the community. But I think that what we can require, even though we have this administrative duty to kind of pass this through, I think we can say to the developer and perhaps the housing department that before it's presented, that the developer is required to at least demonstrate how has the community been notified. What is the level of support in the community? And also, they must include at least a written position from the district council person, not requiring the district council person to support it or oppose it, but at least have in the packet a position from the district council person. That way we have that information in front of us. As you have said, that we will pass it on because they meet, the state requirements, but information, I think, should be gathered to a greater extent than what it has been in the past on this particular project. So thank you, Councilman.
Very interesting suggestion, Mr. Feldman. Is that something that we could require?
Yes, Mayor, we could.
I will ask Director Ratcliffe to include that in going forward. Good suggestion. Thank you. Further discussion? Moving to a vote on the item, and there was a call for a roll call vote.
Mayor Parker,
Yes?
Mayor Parker votes yes, Councilmembers Brown votes no, Davis
No.
votes no, Cohen votes no, Adams votes no, Martin
No.
votes no, Long is absent, Pennington votes no, Gonzalez votes no, Rodriguez votes no, Laster votes no, Green votes no, Costello votes no, Burks is absent, Noriega votes no, Bradford
No.
votes no, and Christie. Christie votes no. Wonderful.